So in the process of cleaning up these dash vents, I found a couple places where the maybe hard to see on camera. This tab is actually broken. I mean, there's just a little bit of plastic right here that's not cracked. So I've got some 2-part epoxy already mixed up. It's just some JB Weld plastic bond. And I'm gonna try to get that down inside the crack and coat it pretty well. And then I may let it pool up a little bit on the outside of the crack and then use some tape to hold everything in place. This is pretty clean, but I'll go ahead and wipe some acetone around the area just to see if it'll help clean anything else off, and then get the, make sure we get a nice good bond. I'm gonna use a toothpick just to try to get the epoxy down in between the plastic pieces as much as I can. So I know it's probably overkill having a clamp and rubber bands and everything, but this plastic probably had been torn for a while, and so it was actually hard to get it pushed back into place. But with that little bit of pressure, everything's nice and tight. The tab on the other end of this defrost vent is the exact same way, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that taken care of before this epoxy sets up. So this is several days in the making, getting to this point. So I have everything completely disassembled and thoroughly cleaned. It was a chore, to say the least. There were, it was caked with rust and fire extinguisher powder and dust and bugs and just nasty crap all through everything. I don't know if you guys remember how dirty the glove box compartment was, but that took some time cleaning. I completely disassembled all the dash vents and got in there and scrubbed everything. Everything is working. Everything's nice and clean now. So put that back together, it should be fine. I went ahead and shot some paint on some of the parts. Like this is the center speaker grill that goes in the center of the dash. So I cleaned that up, shot it with some primer and some paint, so it'll be ready to go back in. And like I said, the last clip you saw, I was fixing these tabs, and they're nice and secure. Everything down inside all these vents was just completely coated with stuff, and so it took a lot of time. And a lot of this you could just put in the sink or hose it down because it's just plastic. But getting in there and scrubbing it was somewhat of a challenge. I probably used a toothbrush and various chip brushes and things like that, because these really get down in all the nooks and crannies. Magic eraser with some cleaner did a great job on the dash, which I'll show you that when we get assembled. I've got all the fasteners cleaned up. This was something that I found at one of the local stores, that it's just a very, very soft, it's like a duster thingy that you'd use to clean like blinds in your house. It's got a really flexible frame, so you can get deep down inside and really scrub inside these pieces. I mean, this thing worked awesome for cleaning the last little bit of stuff, like this duct. I couldn't get my hand very far in there, so that worked great. But again, most of it was just different cleaners, soap and toothbrushes. I did also use some scuff pads on some of the metal parts or some of the harder parts to clean, but that is it. I mean, I literally took everything apart, scrubbed it. They're like this switch for the light in the glove box. I cleaned it up, made sure it's good to go. The last thing I need to do before I get all of this reassembled is there's a lot of pieces that where they made up to the ductwork. There was a foam, kind of like a gasket that sealed that, and a lot of them are just falling apart. I mean, some of them are okay shape, but like particularly these around the dash vents, like, I mean, you just touch them and they disintegrate. So what I'm going to do is peel all that off, clean off any of the residue from the adhesive, and then I've got this. This is actually a very nice high density foam. I think it's a 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch, and it's got a very wide temperature range. It's like minus 50 degrees Celsius to 150 degrees Celsius, something like that. But this will be a little firmer than what's on there, but it should last at least as long as I'm ever going to have this car. Probably outlast the plastic in the dash. So I will go around, clean all of these up, and then reapply this product, and I'll link this below so that you guys can find it. When I purchased this, I went ahead and purchased various other thicknesses so that when I'm putting some of this together, There's going to be some places where maybe there's a squeak or a rattle, or maybe some of the factory foam blocks or something are in bad shape. I've got all kinds of thicknesses just to kind of replace a lot of that. I really wish I could convey how many hours I have into getting to this point, and some of you guys might think it's overkill, but for me, at least now I know it's 100% clean. It's given me the opportunity to go through everything, make sure there's no issues. Once I get these resealed with the adhesive tape, then basically everything will be able to go back into the dash. Once I get most of the dash reassembled, then my next task is going to be going completely through this entire wiring harness, and I'll probably rewrap it, take care of any, like this light bulb I think is blown, take care of any wires that are in need of some attention. But so that'll be the last thing I need to do for the dash. And while I'm down here, I'll just show you the frame for the dash that I got painted. It's just sitting down here because I don't have anywhere else to set it right now. But that makes a world of difference on stopping that rust that was basically coating everything inside the dash. Most of it was coming from that frame. I'm going to start by getting as much of this tape off as I can, and then putting the new tape on. Aside from the couple that you saw me do on the camera, this one I switched over to a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch foam, and it is quite a bit more stiff than the foam that was on there, but I'm hoping it's all pliable enough that once it's in the car, it'll mold to the shape it needs to be. So these basically attach to the various ends of some of the ductwork that actually connect into the dash. These pieces as well, but these are where these will mate up to those once it's all installed in the car. So I went ahead and put a couple of small pieces inside the end, so that when it connects into the main duct, it kind of takes out any play or any potential rattle that could occur. I don't think there was anything continuous in the the way it came from the factory, but just a couple small pieces will help stop it from rattling and create a little bit of a better seal. This one did actually have a couple small pieces from the factory, so I replaced those. Again, I just used 1/4 inch by 1/8 inch for pretty much everything, and this was a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. I think after all this time, that finally completes all the cleaning and repairing and all that kind of good stuff that I need to do. So finally, all of this can go back into the dash. I think on the screws that go into the dash, I'll make sure to put a little bit of grease or something on the ends of those screws so that when they go in, hopefully that helps them go in without doing any more damage to the dash. I'm gonna build everything up. There's gonna be a few ducts that have to go in first, then I'll put in that metal frame. Once that metal frame is in, then we'll be able to kind of snake a lot of the rest of this around that. I'll go ahead and get the ductwork in, get that steel frame in, put the glove compartment back together. I do have to reassemble all of the vents. They're actually really easy to take apart, and so once you've got them apart, it makes it a whole lot easier to clean, just because there's so many nooks and crannies. There wasn't any parts I had to replace, so that's good. So that's enough talking for right now. I'm gonna start getting this back together. You might be able to pick it up in the camera, but when I went to put on the bracket that holds the center dash vent on, the little nub that sticks out to receive the screw broke off, which it was already broken, and I had tried to repair it with some two-part epoxy. It's actually broken into two parts, and it's pretty well cracked all the way through. I'm just going to see if I can go out into my parts bin and see if I've got a longer screw. Even if it's a little bit smaller diameter, I think I can just engage the one that's there. Unfortunately, I won't be able to cinch it down too tight because now it doesn't have anything to back up against it. So I may try to put this back in just to act more like a spacer. That's probably going to happen. That's why I'm trying to go easy. And I'm actually I decided to use just some plastic conditioner just because it's kind of, it's kind of oily. And I'm using that as I'm feeding the screws in. I need to go out and look and see if I've got a little bit longer screw that's the same thread and diameter. What I found that I had, and it actually just worked just right, this pack of screws that I have has 3/4 inch and 1 inch long number 10 screws, which I don't know exactly what size these all are. It's just a little bit longer than the factory screws, so I was able to get into the part that wasn't cracked, and then I just used the piece that broke off as just a spacer to hold it, and there's a little play to it, just because that spacer isn't like locked in, but it's not going to move, at least from normal use, but it's, the whole dash vent is nice and secure. I think the next piece that needs to go in is this duct, just because if I remember correctly, this the steel frame sits over top this, and it makes it difficult to get on and off. Of course, I've got to line it up with these 3 ducts. They're all connected, so that'll be the next thing that we do. As many days as it took me to clean everything, it really didn't take that long to put back together. So I have everything assembled. Now I'll be able to hopefully snake the wiring harness around everything and get it fastened down. I really don't want to have to take any of this apart, but there is a chance that maybe some of this has to come off to get some of the wiring harness through. I checked my leftover parts, and of course I did confirm this is the center channel amp, so I probably won't delete this from the wiring harness just because you never know, but I'll probably bundle the connector that came to this with the wiring harness so it's not flopping around. Of course, the center speaker, all the screws and hardware for those, the center dash, which that'll go in after I'm done assembling everything. And then these are the 3 ground bolts that'll go in the frame, and then these are the 2 screws that I replaced with longer ones because the plastic cracked. So I don't have any extra parts. That's always a good thing. So the last thing I'll really need to do before I get the wiring harness put on is probably come in and clean up where these grounding points are. I tried to tape over them before I painted it, but they may need to be scraped off a little bit more. So there's 3 of them, one there, one right here. And of course, it still has a tape on it, but anywhere this connects back to the car, I'll want to clean that up because that's probably how it gets its ground, is through the connections at the transmission tunnel and the connections at the firewall. So I'll get all that cleaned up. But for now, like I said, I need to get onto this wiring harness. It really won't be that much work, I think, other than cutting everything off, and that'll be messy. But I think for the most part, I'll be able just to go through this and get it replaced pretty well. I mean, that is a huge improvement. I mean, it is really clean, and just getting this painted will make the world of difference. No one will ever see it, but I'll know that it was done, and I don't have to worry about rust falling back out of, back into the dash or anything like that. Next step is going to start tackling that wiring harness, but for now, there's the finished assembly of the dash. So I know not everyone has an RX-7, but if you're rebuilding your car, and depends on what you're doing. If you're building a race car, then you may actually come in and get some weight savings by reducing or eliminating some of the ducts. Like I said, refurbishing some of the gaskets is going to help performance of the circulation system. But I think a lot of the concepts here will apply to just about anybody. Just take your time and document everything. I mean, I did go back and look at some of the pictures I took, so that's definitely something I would recommend. Taking lots of photos, all around, because you never know. Like, there was an orientation on a bracket somewhere that I was a little confused by, and so looking back at my picture helped me figure that out. Honestly, this has taken a long time, going through, cleaning this out, going piece by piece and trying to make sure everything was done correctly. And I know I rushed through a lot of things and just used a lot of time lapse just because it's kind of self-explanatory. But if you do have any questions, make sure to leave them down below, or if you have any tips to leave for future viewers of the video, please do that. If you guys like the video, please consider subscribing and give the video a thumbs up. It really lets me know that you guys appreciate the content. It's been a very long day for me, and I'm glad this is out of the way, and now I can get into that wiring harness. But thanks for watching, and I'm going to catch you guys next time.